It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. But what of the power that emerges not from fear nor from love, but from the profound depths of calculated silence? Part 1: The foundation of silent sovereignty in the grand theater of human interaction, where extroverts command the stage with their vocal performances and animated gestures. There exists a different breed of power, one that operates from the shadows, observes from the periphery, and strikes with surgical precision when the moment demands it. This is the realm of silent confidence, the domain of the confidently introverted, where true strength manifests not in the volume of one's voice but in the weight of one's presence. The world has long celebrated the gregarious, the outspoken, the naturally charismatic. Yet history's most formidable strategists, its greatest minds, and its most enduring leaders often possessed a quality that transcended mere social extroversion. They understood that power derived not from constant display but from careful cultivation, not from immediate gratification but from patient orchestration of events. Consider the master chess player who sits in contemplative silence while opponents chatter nervously, or the skilled negotiator who allows uncomfortable pauses to extract concessions that words never could. These individuals have discovered what the ancient strategists knew, that silence, properly wielded, becomes the most potent weapon in one's arsenal. The introvert who has mastered silent confidence possesses advantages that the extroverted world rarely comprehends. While others expend energy broadcasting their intentions, the silent confident individual conserves their resources, observing patterns, identifying weaknesses, and positioning themselves for maximum impact with minimum exposure. They understand that in a world drowning in noise, the person who speaks selectively commands attention by scarcity alone. This principle extends far beyond mere social interactions. In boardrooms where deals worth millions hang in the balance, the executive who masters the art of strategic silence often emerges victorious over those who feel compelled to fill every moment with speech. The entrepreneur who listens more than they speak discovers opportunities that escape their more vocal competitors. The leader who allows others to reveal their positions first gains invaluable intelligence that shapes their own strategic responses. The foundation of silent confidence rests upon several pillars, each reinforcing the others in an architecture of personal power. The first pillar is self-knowledge, a deep, unflinching understanding of one's strengths, limitations, triggers, and motivations. Unlike extroverts who often process their thoughts externally, the silent confident individual has learned to conduct this analysis internally, reaching conclusions before others even realize questions exist. This internal processing creates a profound advantage in decision-making scenarios. While extroverted individuals may feel pressured to respond immediately, offering half-formed thoughts that can be exploited or criticized, the introvert with silent confidence takes time to formulate complete, defensible positions. When they finally speak, their words carry the weight of careful consideration, making them difficult to dismiss or refute. The second pillar involves the mastery of presence over presentation. Traditional concepts of charisma often focus on animated storytelling, infectious enthusiasm, and magnetic personality displays. Silent confidence operates on a different frequency entirely. It communicates through posture, timing, and the deliberate use of space and pause. A person with silent confidence can dominate a room without saying a word, simply through the certainty of their bearing and the purposefulness of their movements. This presence manifests in numerous ways throughout daily interactions. In meetings, while others jostle for speaking time, the silent confident individual positions themselves strategically, observes group dynamics, and identifies the optimal moment for intervention. When they do contribute, it often shifts the entire direction of the discussion because their input has been carefully calibrated for maximum impact. The third pillar centers on the strategic management of information. Extroverted individuals often share freely, viewing communication as a means of connection and validation. The silent confident person recognizes information as currency, to be spent wisely and with clear objectives. They become skilled at extracting information while revealing little about their own positions, creating asymmetric advantages in negotiations, relationships, and competitive scenarios. This information management extends to personal branding and reputation building. While extroverts may seek frequent validation and feedback, the silent confident individual allows their results to speak for themselves. They understand that mystery and competence create a more powerful combination than accessibility and mediocrity. People become intrigued by what they cannot fully understand or predict, leading to increased respect and influence. The cultivation of silent confidence requires recognition that introversion itself is not the goal, it is merely the natural temperament that, when properly developed, can yield extraordinary results. Many introverts remain trapped in defensive patterns, viewing their natural tendencies as limitations to be overcome rather than advantages to be leveraged. They apologize for needing time to process, for preferring smaller groups, for thinking before speaking. This defensive posture undermines the very strengths that introversion provides. True silent confidence emerges when an individual stops apologizing for their natural processing style and begins weaponizing it. Instead of rushing to fill conversational gaps, they allow silence to create pressure that others feel compelled to relieve, often by revealing more than they intended. Instead of forcing themselves into large networking events where they feel drained and perform poorly, they focus on building deeper, more meaningful connections in settings that play to their strengths. The development process requires honest assessment of current patterns and deliberate practice of new behaviors. Most introverts have learned to survive in an extroverted world by mimicking extroverted behaviors, often exhausting themselves in the process and delivering suboptimal results. Silent confidence demands a different approach, doubling down on natural strengths while developing complementary skills that enhance rather than replace inherent tendencies. This might involve learning to read micro-expressions and body language more accurately, since introverts often process visual and emotional information more thoroughly than their extroverted counterparts. It could mean developing expertise in areas that naturally align with introverted strengths: research, analysis, strategic planning, or specialized knowledge that others seek out. The key lies in becoming so valuable in your natural domain that others must adapt to your preferred communication style rather than constantly requiring you to adapt to theirs. The psychological foundations of silent confidence also require addressing the internal narratives that many introverts carry about their social adequacy. Society often treats extroversion as the default positive state, implying that introversion represents a deficiency to be corrected. This messaging can create internal conflict, where individuals simultaneously know their introversion serves them well while feeling pressure to be more outgoing, spontaneous, or socially available. Silent confidence resolves this conflict by reframing introversion as a strategic advantage rather than a social limitation. It recognizes that the ability to think before speaking, to process complex information internally, to remain comfortable with silence, and to build deep rather than broad relationships represents valuable capabilities that can be leveraged for significant personal and professional gain. The master of silent confidence learns to read rooms not just for spoken communication but for underlying currents of tension, alliance, ambition, and insecurity that others miss while focused on surface-level interactions. They notice who defers to whom, who seeks validation from whom, where the real power lies versus where the apparent authority sits. This observational capacity, natural to many introverts, becomes a strategic intelligence-gathering operation that informs all subsequent interactions. In professional environments, this translates to identifying organizational dynamics that escaped notice during formal presentations. The silent confident individual notices which executives actually listen to which subordinates, which departments truly influence decision-making, and which initiatives have real versus superficial support. Armed with this intelligence, they can position themselves, their ideas, and their resources far more effectively than colleagues who focus primarily on obvious hierarchies and stated policies. The art of strategic silence also involves learning when and how to break silence for maximum impact. Timing becomes crucial. Speaking too early dissipates the power that silence has accumulated, while waiting too long risks appearing disengaged or unprepared. The optimal moment often occurs when tension or uncertainty has built to a critical point, and a well-crafted intervention can shift the entire dynamic in favorable directions. This skill requires practice and calibration. In lower-stakes situations, experimenting with different timing and approaches helps build confidence and refine technique. The goal is developing an intuitive sense of group rhythm and pressure points, allowing for interventions that feel natural and authoritative rather than calculated or manipulative. The personal relationships of those who master silent confidence often puzzle observers who expect constant communication and emotional display as indicators of connection strength. Instead, these individuals build relationships based on reliability, depth, and mutual respect rather than frequent interaction and emotional intensity. Their friends and colleagues learn to value quality over quantity in communication, often finding these relationships more satisfying and durable than those characterized by constant contact and superficial exchange. Professional relationships benefit similarly from this approach. While some colleagues may initially interpret careful communication as aloofness or disengagement, consistent competence and selective but meaningful contributions gradually build a reputation for substance over style. People begin seeking out these individuals specifically because they know they will receive thoughtful, well-considered input rather than off-the-cuff reactions or politically motivated responses. The energy management aspect of silent confidence cannot be understated. Extroverts often gain energy from social interaction, while introverts typically expend energy in social situations, requiring solitude to recharge. The silent confident individual learns to structure their schedule and commitments to optimize energy levels for high-impact situations while minimizing energy waste on low-value social obligations. This might involve declining certain social invitations not out of antisocial tendencies but from strategic resource allocation. It could mean scheduling important meetings for times when energy levels are naturally highest, or building in recovery time after intensive social or professional engagements. The goal is maintaining peak performance capacity for situations where silent confidence can create the greatest advantage. Part 2: The Architecture of Influence. The transition from merely being introverted to wielding silent confidence as a tool of influence requires understanding how power operates in human systems. Traditional models of influence often emphasize visibility, charisma, and constant engagement, approaches that drain introverts while playing to their weaker natural tendencies. The architecture of influence for the silent confident individual operates on entirely different principles, leveraging depth over breadth, quality over quantity, and strategic positioning over constant activity. The first element in this architecture involves the creation and management of mystique. Human psychology demonstrates consistent fascination with the partially known, the competent but reserved, the individual who clearly possesses depth but reveals it selectively. This natural psychological tendency can be deliberately cultivated and leveraged. While extroverts often diminish mystique through oversharing and constant availability, the silent confident person maintains strategic opacity that keeps others engaged and curious. This mystique manifests through consistent competence combined with selective revelation. Colleagues and superiors learn that when this individual contributes to discussions, their input typically proves valuable, well-considered, and actionable. However, they cannot predict when or how such contributions will emerge, creating anticipation and attention whenever the person appears ready to engage. This unpredictability, combined with reliability of quality, generates influence that exceeds what constant participation might achieve. The management of mystique requires careful balance. Too much opacity creates perceptions of disengagement or lack of commitment, while too much revelation eliminates the intrigue that generates influence. The optimal approach involves establishing patterns of selective engagement where others learn to value and seek out your input while respecting your preferred communication style. This might mean consistently contributing 1 or 2 high-quality insights per meeting rather than engaging in continuous discussion, or developing expertise in specific areas where others naturally defer to your judgment. The second architectural element focuses on the development of what might be termed gravitational influence, the ability to draw others toward your positions and perspectives without aggressive persuasion or constant advocacy. This influence operates similarly to physical gravity. It becomes stronger as your mass, expertise, reliability, results, increases, and it works continuously without requiring constant energy expenditure. Gravitational influence develops through the consistent demonstration of sound judgment over time. While extroverted individuals might seek to influence others through passionate advocacy or frequent persuasion attempts, the silent confident person builds influence by consistently being right about important matters. Their track record of accurate assessments, successful predictions, or valuable insights gradually establishes them as someone worth listening to and following. This approach requires patience and long-term thinking that many extroverts struggle to maintain. Instead of seeking immediate validation or quick wins, the silent confident individual focuses on building credibility through sustained performance. They might spend months or years developing expertise in specific areas, contributing valuable analysis, or demonstrating judgment that others come to rely upon. The influence that emerges from this process often proves more durable and effective than that achieved through more aggressive methods. The cultivation of gravitational influence also involves strategic positioning within organizational or social networks. Rather than attempting to be connected to everyone, the silent confident individual identifies key relationships and influence nodes that can amplify their impact. They might build strong relationships with 2 or 3 highly influential people rather than maintaining superficial connections with dozens of acquaintances. These strategic relationships often involve complementary strengths. The silent confident individual might partner with more extroverted colleagues who excel at presenting ideas and building enthusiasm, while providing the analytical depth and strategic thinking that makes their joint efforts more successful. This symbiotic approach allows both parties to operate from their strengths while achieving results that neither could accomplish independently. The third architectural element centers on the mastery of strategic timing. While extroverts often operate on impulse or immediate reaction, the silent confident person develops an intuitive sense of optimal timing for various types of intervention. They learn to distinguish between moments when immediate response is required versus situations where delayed response provides advantages. This timing mastery applies across multiple dimensions of influence. In conflicts or disagreements, the silent confident individual might allow others to exhaust themselves in immediate argument while gathering information and formulating responses that address underlying issues rather than surface positions. In negotiations, they might use silence and patience to create pressure that leads to more favorable terms. In team dynamics, they might wait for natural leadership vacuums to emerge before stepping forward with solutions or direction. The development of timing intuition requires careful observation of how different personality types respond to various approaches. Extroverts might appreciate immediate engagement and energy matching, while other introverts might prefer time to process before engaging in substantial discussions. Authority figures might respond differently to direct approach versus indirect influence through trusted intermediaries. Learning to read these preferences and adjust timing accordingly multiplies the effectiveness of any given intervention. Strategic timing also involves understanding organizational or social rhythms and cycles. Certain proposals might be well received during periods of growth and optimism but rejected during times of uncertainty or resource constraints. Some individuals might be more receptive to new ideas early in the week versus late on Friday afternoons. The silent confident person learns to work with these natural rhythms rather than against them, significantly improving their success rates. The fourth architectural element involves the sophisticated use of questions as influence tools. While extroverts often influence through statements, declarations, and direct persuasion, the silent confident individual can achieve superior results through carefully crafted questions that lead others to desired conclusions. This approach proves particularly effective because people typically feel more committed to ideas they believe they discovered independently rather than concepts imposed upon them by others. The art of influential questioning requires understanding how to structure inquiries that guide thinking without appearing manipulative. This might involve asking questions that highlight inconsistencies in current approaches, that reveal unstated assumptions, or that connect disparate pieces of information in ways that suggest new solutions. The key lies in genuine curiosity combined with strategic direction. The questions must be authentic and valuable even as they serve larger influence objectives. Effective questioning also requires comfort with silence after posing inquiries. Many people feel compelled to answer their own questions or provide immediate guidance when responses don't come quickly. The silent confident individual learns to pose questions and, then, wait, allowing others the time and space needed for genuine consideration. This patience often leads to deeper insights and stronger commitment to resulting decisions. The questioning approach proves particularly valuable in group settings where direct advocacy might create resistance or defensive responses. By asking thoughtful questions, the silent confident person can guide group discussion toward conclusions that serve their objectives while allowing others to feel ownership of the decision-making process. This approach typically generates less resistance and more sustainable commitment than direct persuasion attempts. The fifth architectural element focuses on the creation and maintenance of strategic alliances. Unlike networking approaches that emphasize broad relationship building, the silent confident individual typically focuses on developing deeper relationships with carefully selected allies who can provide mutual benefit and support. These relationships often prove more valuable and durable than extensive but superficial networks. Strategic alliance building requires identifying individuals whose strengths complement your own natural abilities and whose objectives align with your long-term goals. This might involve partnering with extroverts who excel at promotion and visibility while you provide analytical depth and strategic planning. It could mean building relationships with people who have access to information, resources, or influence that you need while offering valuable expertise or support in return. The maintenance of strategic alliances requires ongoing attention to mutual benefit and clear communication about expectations and boundaries. Unlike casual relationships that might operate on informal reciprocity, strategic alliances benefit from explicit understanding of how each party contributes value and what each expects in return. This clarity prevents misunderstandings and ensures that both parties remain committed to the relationship's success. These alliances often prove particularly valuable during challenging periods when individual influence might be insufficient to achieve desired outcomes. Having established relationships with people who trust your judgment and value your contributions creates options for collaborative approaches that multiply individual capacity. The silent confident person might activate these relationships selectively, calling upon allies when their combined influence can achieve objectives that individual efforts could not accomplish. The development of influence architecture also requires understanding how to leverage introversion as a competitive advantage rather than viewing it as a limitation to overcome. While extroverts might compete directly for attention and recognition, the silent confident individual can often achieve superior results by operating in spaces and using approaches where introversion provides natural advantages. This might involve volunteering for projects that require deep analysis, careful planning, or sustained focus, areas where introverted strengths naturally excel. It could mean positioning yourself as the person others turn to when they need thoughtful advice, careful evaluation of options, or strategic thinking about complex challenges. By becoming known for specific capabilities that align with introverted strengths, you create demand for your unique contributions rather than competing in areas where extroverts have natural advantages. The leverage of introverted strengths also involves understanding how to present and communicate your contributions in ways that maximize their impact. This might mean learning to distill complex analysis into clear, actionable recommendations rather than overwhelming others with detailed explanations. It could involve developing skills in written communication that allow you to present ideas thoroughly without relying solely on verbal presentation abilities. The final element in influence architecture involves the cultivation of what might be termed selective indispensability, becoming extremely valuable in specific areas while maintaining reasonable boundaries around your time and energy commitments. This approach differs from trying to be helpful to everyone in all situations, which typically leads to burnout and diminished effectiveness. Selective indispensability requires identifying areas where your unique combination of skills, knowledge, and approach creates significant value that others cannot easily replicate. This might involve developing deep expertise in specific technical areas, building unique insights into industry trends, or cultivating specialized relationships that provide access to valuable resources or information. Once these areas of indispensability are established, the silent confident individual can leverage them to create favorable conditions for their other objectives. People who depend on your unique contributions become invested in maintaining positive relationships and accommodating your preferred working styles. This creates space for you to operate from your strengths while having others adapt to your needs rather than constantly requiring you to adapt to theirs. The development of selective indispensability requires long-term thinking and patience, as specialized expertise and unique value propositions typically take time to develop. However, the resulting influence often proves more sustainable and satisfying than that achieved through constant adaptation to extroverted expectations and requirements. Part 3: The Mastery of Silent Command. The culmination of silent confidence lies not merely in personal success or individual advancement, but in the ability to guide, influence, and lead others while operating from your natural strengths rather than borrowed extroverted behaviors. This represents the highest evolution of introverted power, the capacity to command respect, drive results, and shape outcomes without relying on traditional models of leadership that emphasize constant visibility, charismatic presentation, or perpetual availability. The mastery of silent command begins with understanding that leadership itself comes in multiple forms, many of which align perfectly with introverted strengths. While popular culture often presents leadership through the lens of the charismatic speaker rallying crowds or the gregarious executive working every room, history provides countless examples of highly effective leaders who operated through careful analysis, strategic thinking, and selective but powerful intervention rather than constant performance and public engagement. These leaders understood that sustainable influence emerges not from the ability to entertain or inspire in the moment, but from consistent demonstration of sound judgment, reliable competence, and the capacity to see patterns and possibilities that others miss. They led through the force of their ideas rather than the power of their personalities, through the depth of their preparation rather than the spontaneity of their responses, and through the quality of their decisions rather than the frequency of their communications. The development of silent command requires recognizing that different situations call for different leadership approaches, and that the silent confident individual possesses natural advantages in many critical leadership scenarios. During crisis situations, when emotions run high and panic might drive poor decision-making, the person who can remain calm, process information clearly, and develop thoughtful responses often emerges as the natural leader regardless of their formal title or traditional charisma. In complex problem-solving scenarios, where superficial solutions might create larger problems, the individual who takes time to understand underlying systems and connections frequently provides the insights that lead to sustainable solutions. During strategic planning processes, when long-term thinking and careful analysis prove more valuable than immediate enthusiasm, introverted strengths become particularly relevant and valuable. The master of silent command learns to identify these situations where their natural approach provides advantages, and positions themselves to take leadership roles when such circumstances arise. Rather than competing for leadership in all situations, they become known as the person others turn to when specific types of challenges require their particular combination of skills and temperament. This positioning requires what might be called strategic patience, the willingness to wait for appropriate opportunities rather than forcing leadership in situations that don't align with your strengths. While extroverts might seek leadership opportunities broadly, the silent confident individual focuses on situations where they can add unique value and achieve superior results through their natural approach. The exercise of silent command also involves mastering the art of indirect influence, the ability to shape outcomes and guide decisions without requiring formal authority or direct control. This approach often proves more effective and sustainable than direct command structures, particularly in environments where people value autonomy and resist overt management. Indirect influence operates through multiple channels simultaneously. It might involve asking questions that lead others to reach desired conclusions, providing information that shapes how others understand situations, or creating conditions that make certain choices more attractive than alternatives. The key lies in understanding human psychology and decision-making processes well enough to influence outcomes while allowing others to maintain their sense of autonomy and ownership. This approach requires sophisticated understanding of motivation, both in terms of what drives individual behavior and what creates group dynamics that support desired outcomes. The master of silent command learns to read underlying needs, concerns, and objectives that might not be explicitly stated, using this knowledge to craft approaches that address these deeper issues while advancing their own goals. The development of indirect influence also involves learning to work through systems and structures rather than relying primarily on personal relationships or direct persuasion. This might mean understanding how organizational processes work and finding ways to influence those processes rather than trying to convince individuals to act against their systematic incentives. It could involve identifying key decision-making bottlenecks and positioning yourself to influence those critical points rather than trying to influence every person involved in implementation. The mastery of timing reaches its highest expression in silent command, where the leader learns not only when to act but when to refrain from action, when to be visible versus when to remain behind the scenes, and when to take credit versus when to allow others to receive recognition. This sophisticated timing sense often distinguishes truly effective leaders from those who might achieve short-term results but struggle to build sustainable influence and lasting impact. Strategic timing in leadership contexts involves understanding the rhythms of organizational change, individual readiness for new approaches, and broader environmental factors that might affect the reception and implementation of various initiatives. The silent leader learns to read these multiple timing dimensions simultaneously, finding windows of opportunity where their initiatives have the highest probability of success and the greatest potential for lasting impact. This timing mastery also extends to personal energy management and the recognition that leadership effectiveness depends on being able to perform at peak capacity during critical moments. Unlike extroverted leaders who might maintain high visibility and constant availability, the silent leader learns to conserve energy for situations where their unique contributions can make the greatest difference. The cultivation of what might be termed earned authority represents another crucial element of silent command. Rather than relying on formal titles, positional power, or charismatic appeal, the silent leader builds authority through consistent demonstration of competence, judgment, and results. This earned authority often proves more durable and effective than authority derived from external sources, because it stems from others' direct experience of the leader's capabilities. Earned authority develops through a track record of accurate analysis, successful recommendations, and valuable contributions that others come to depend upon. It requires consistency over time, not just occasional brilliant insights, but reliable competence that others can count on. This consistency builds trust and confidence that leads others to seek out your guidance and follow your recommendations even in the absence of formal authority relationships. The building of earned authority also involves careful management of your reputation and the deliberate cultivation of specific competencies that align with your natural strengths while addressing important organizational or group needs. This might mean becoming the person others turn to for strategic analysis, complex problem solving, or careful evaluation of high-stakes decisions. The communication aspects of silent command require developing abilities that complement rather than contradict your natural introverted preferences. While you might never become comfortable with large group presentations or impromptu speaking, you can develop exceptional skills in one-on-one communication, written analysis, or small group facilitation that allow you to exercise leadership effectively within your comfort zone. This might involve becoming exceptionally skilled at preparing and delivering focused presentations to small groups of decision-makers rather than trying to inspire large audiences. It could mean developing written communication abilities that allow you to influence through compelling analysis and clear recommendations rather than relying solely on verbal persuasion. The key lies in finding communication approaches that leverage your strengths while meeting the needs of those you seek to lead. The development of these complementary communication skills often requires practice and feedback, but the investment typically yields superior results because you're building on natural foundations rather than fighting against your temperament. Many introverts discover that they can be highly effective communicators when they're not trying to mimic extroverted styles but instead developing approaches that align with their natural processing and presentation preferences. The delegation and team-building aspects of silent command present unique opportunities for introverted leaders. Because they typically prefer to focus on fewer things more deeply rather than trying to manage everything directly, silent leaders often become skilled at identifying and developing other people's strengths, creating systems that allow teams to operate effectively with less direct oversight. This delegation approach often proves superior to micromanagement styles because it develops others' capabilities while freeing the leader to focus on areas where they can add the most value. The silent leader learns to hire and develop people whose skills complement their own, creating teams that collectively possess all necessary capabilities while allowing each member to operate from their individual strengths. The team-building approach of the silent leader typically emphasizes competence over chemistry, results over relationships, and sustainable systems over personal charisma. While they might not create the high-energy, emotionally intensive team cultures that some extroverted leaders generate, they often build more stable, productive, and resilient teams that continue performing effectively even when the leader is not present. The legacy aspect of silent command involves understanding that the most effective leaders often create lasting impact through the systems, people, and ideas they develop rather than through their personal presence or charismatic influence. The silent leader focuses on building capabilities and creating conditions for success that continue operating effectively beyond their direct involvement. This legacy orientation requires long-term thinking and the patience to invest in developments that might not yield immediate visible results but create substantial value over time. It might involve mentoring and developing other leaders, creating organizational processes that improve decision-making and execution, or establishing principles and approaches that continue guiding decisions long after the original leader has moved on to other challenges. The measurement of success for the master of silent command often differs from traditional leadership metrics that emphasize visibility, recognition, or short-term achievements. Instead, success might be measured by the sustainability of improvements, the development of others' capabilities, the quality of decisions and outcomes, and the creation of lasting value that continues generating benefits over extended periods. This alternative success framework requires confidence in your approach and resistance to pressure for more immediate or visible results. It also requires the ability to find satisfaction in achievements that might not receive public recognition but create genuine value for those you serve and lead. The ultimate expression of silent command involves the paradox that the most effective exercise of this type of leadership often makes the leader less obviously necessary rather than more central to operations. By developing others, creating effective systems, and building sustainable capabilities, the silent leader creates conditions where their unique contributions become integrated into the ongoing operations rather than remaining dependent on their continued direct involvement. This outcome represents success rather than displacement, because it demonstrates that the leader's influence has become sufficiently embedded in people, processes, and culture to continue operating effectively without constant supervision. The silent leader understands that the highest form of leadership creates independence rather than dependence, capabilities rather than reliance, and sustainable excellence rather than temporary inspiration. The journey toward mastering silent command requires embracing the apparent contradictions inherent in leading from natural introverted strengths while operating in environments that often expect and reward extroverted leadership styles. This mastery involves neither wholesale adoption of extroverted approaches nor stubborn insistence on purely introverted methods, but rather the sophisticated integration of your natural strengths with complementary skills that allow you to be effective across a broader range of leadership challenges. The development process requires patience, practice, and the willingness to experiment with different approaches while maintaining core alignment with your temperament and values. It involves building confidence in your natural leadership capabilities while developing additional skills that expand your effectiveness without compromising your authentic approach. The result of this development process is not an introverted leader trying to act like an extrovert, but rather a fully realized leader who operates from introversion as a source of strength rather than a limitation to overcome. This leader commands respect not through borrowed charisma but through demonstrated competence, influences others not through constant persuasion but through earned trust, and achieves results not through heroic individual effort but through the systematic development of capabilities and conditions that enable sustained excellence. The mastery of silent command ultimately represents the full realization of introverted potential in leadership contexts, where natural strengths become the foundation for approaches that prove not only personally sustainable but also highly effective in achieving important objectives and creating lasting value. This mastery demonstrates that leadership excellence comes in multiple forms, and that the quiet strength of the confident introvert represents one of the most powerful and enduring expressions of human capability in guiding, influencing, and improving the world around us.